close your eyes. Tonight, I'll tell you about a cold old castle. The hearth is dying. Guards doze off, a knife hides under the king's pillow. Someone slips through a door. Blood drips, a dog barks. A shadow runs through the dark cellar. Servants warm their hands by weak embers. Children cling to mothers wide awake from ghost tales. Then dawn comes. Everything quiet again. Only you, your warm blanket, and a small truth surviving a long night makes you love this soft bed even more. Keep your breath slow and steady. In a moment, you will stand before an old castle gate on an evening that has quietly given itself to the coming night. The sun has slipped behind the far hills. The last golden threads linger on the stone walls, brushing over cracks and patches of green moss, then fading like a tired sigh. They say the castle is cold even under the noon sun, but at night it truly draws breath and releases a chill that creeps under every door. Look around you. The wide stone yard holds its silence, as if it has swallowed every word spoken here for centuries. Only the crunch of a guard's boots breaks the hush, grinding old moss under iron soles. Each step presses the last warmth of the day deeper into the stone, and the shadows stretching behind them lie long and thin across the courtyard, like blades laid out in waiting. Further down, an iron gate begins to groan. Chains rattle low, and harsh hinges squeal as they wake to their nightly duty. A guard, his hands stiff in worn leather gloves, leans his shoulder hard against the weight of iron that remembers 1,000 winters. Every night this heavy closing tells the same truth. Once the gate is locked, no stranger enters, and no soul inside can slip away, no matter how badly they might wish to. Listen closely. The thick bolt scrapes and slams into its carved stone slot. The sound bounces off every wall before falling into the deep pockets of the yard's empty corners. The wind slips through the smallest cracks left behind, curling icy fingers around the guards' necks and tugging at the edges of villagers' cloaks as they hurry past the old wellheads low. A mother grips her son's wrist, urging his small legs to move faster before the final bar drops. His cheeks burn red from running tiny fingers, locked around her coat eyes wide at every dark corner, fearful of what might crawl out if he is left outside when the gate seals shut. On the far side of the courtyard, 3 men walk quick but quiet burlap sacks heavy on weary backs, scarves pulled up to hide faces from the sharp air. Each step says the same thing: reach home, bolt the door, light the fire guard. What's yours for when darkness fills the yard? So do the thoughts that drive bold men to steal. Near the gate, the older guards hand over their posts. A fresh watch appears, boots tapping against the stones, the soft jangle of chain links whispering under breath, made white with cold. They nod to their tired brothers and spread out along the ramparts, eyes already searching for any trouble that might wait behind the next gust of wind. No one wastes words. Between stones and sky, they keep their secrets to themselves. By a wall in the yard's far corner, the remains of morning firewood have been piled into a low brazier. Around it, 2 guards squat, close palms held over the faint red coals. Thin threads of smoke wind their way up into the dark roof beams above. One mutters a rough curse under his breath when a sudden breeze finds the gap between helmet and collar, sliding icy teeth down the back of his neck. Deeper in the shadows, huddled shapes stand near a side door, rough cloth pulled over their heads, shoulders hunched against the draft. These are the kitchen hands back from the outer stalls with fresh vegetables and salted meat for the stewing pot. They wait for a nod to slip inside before the bolt drops here too, shutting out every chance to step into the night. See it in your mind, this fortress planted in the middle of empty fields, stone walls guarding against wind but never the dark. Within these walls, small timber homes lean close to the old ramparts. Tiny hearths flicker, but out here under the open sky, warmth is only a dying ember buried in winter breath. Behind thick doors, villagers drag heavy beams across door frames, whisper short prayers that the night passes swiftly, that watchmen stay sharp, that greedy hands stay far from the latch, Yet everyone knows the castle's night is never truly quiet. A cough can echo like a drumbeat, a groan, or a stealthy footstep can carry from yard to tower, where walls seem to listen more than any man ever could. And now you listen too. Your breath is softer now, isn't it? Night has only just brushed its fingers across this place, yet already shadows slip along the guards' backs, tap cold fingertips against old women's necks, creep under shutters not quite closed. Close your eyes just a little tighter. Stay with me while we drift deeper into this waiting dark. A place where even one careless step can wake a fortress that wishes to stay sleeping, where low embers blink awake to guard the restless. And maybe if luck is kind, watch over the ones brave enough to dream. The night is long. We have only taken our first step inside it. Come quietly with me now, away from the stone yard, where the guards walk their rounds past the last door that only trusted hands may open. This door is taller than any man in this castle, carved with lions and vines so old that no one remembers who first ordered them there. Behind it is the king's chamber, warmer than the yard outside, but not nearly warm enough to quiet the fear that follows him to bed every night. The air inside is heavy. Thick velvet drapes hang down from the bed's canopy, pulled tight to trap the warmth inside. Furs and blankets cover the king from shoulder to foot. Thick bear pelts, old fox skins, a few heavy sheets of linen brought from lands far warmer than these stone walls. It should be enough. It is not. Under the layers, sweat clings to his skin and soaks into the linen beneath him. The smell of old fur and stale air mixes with the sharp scent of iron coming from the short dagger hidden just under his pillow. One hand stays on that dagger all night, fingers curled around the hilt so tight that by morning his palm will bear the imprint of the cold metal. He shifts his weight on the bed. The pelts rustle, the mattress creaks. But outside the curtains, no one dares ask if he needs anything. Near the foot of the bed, in the soft flicker of a single candle, a young servant kneels. His head is down. He has not moved in nearly an hour. His knees ache from the stone floor, but he does not dare stand until the king gives him leave. This boy has served the king many times before. Fetched wine taken off boots splashed with mud, stirred the embers when the fire burned too low. Tonight, though, his task is nothing more than to wait. Wait in case the king suddenly wants water, or more fur, or perhaps just someone to shout at when his thoughts grow too heavy to bear alone. But the room stays quiet. The only sounds are the crackle of a few dying coals in the brazier near the door, and the low sigh of wind that squeezes in through a thin crack in the stone wall. Sometimes the wind whistles so sharp that the boy wonders if it is speaking secrets meant for no man to hear. The king's eyes remain open, staring up at the dark canopy above him. Shadows dance across the carved beams every time the candle flickers. He imagines someone slipping through those shadows, pushing aside the heavy curtains and leaning over him with a blade sharper than the one he grips now. He has seen it before in dreams and in the cruel daylight when traitors once walked too close to his throne. His chest rises and falls slowly, but inside his mind races. He wonders if the guards outside his door are awake. He wonders if the servant kneeling so still would sell him for gold, or freedom should someone offer enough. He wonders if the hidden door behind the old shelf, the one only he and a few trusted men know, is still locked tight. The servant does not know what the king is thinking. He only feels the tension filling the room like a storm waiting to break. He wishes the king would speak. Even an order to leave would be a mercy. His legs shake and he shifts his weight just slightly. The king hears it. Their eyes meet for a heartbeat. The boy's breath catches in his throat. One wrong move, and he knows the king would not hesitate. He has seen the king punish men for far less than a shuffle of the feet. He lowers his head again, breathing as softly as he can, hoping the next draft of wind covers the sound of his fear. Outside the thick curtains, the wind continues its soft howl. Somewhere beyond this room, a door creaks open and shuts again. Maybe it's just a guard changing post. Maybe it's not. The king's fingers tighten around his dagger, the sharp iron edge pressing a promise into his skin. No words pass between master and servant. There is nothing to say. In this castle, loyalty is thin as paper and trust melts like old snow. Only the knife stays true. If you were standing here behind the curtain, you would see that this grand bed, piled high with warm furs and fine cloth, is really just another prison. Outside, the villagers fear thieves. Inside, the king fears everyone. He shifts again, drawing the dagger slightly from under the pillow just enough to feel its weight, and remind himself he still has the power to strike first if it comes to that. The servant does not dare look up this time. He simply prays not for the king, but for himself. That dawn comes soon and finds him still alive, still on his knees, not bleeding on these cold stones. Tonight, no one here will sleep deeply. The walls may hold out the wind and the dark, but they do not hold out doubt. And the king knows better than to trust a locked door or a warm blanket. Stay with me now. Breathe slow. This is only one room in a castle full of shadows. There is more to see, more to hear, but for now, let us watch the king lie awake with his dagger, and the boy kneel without hope of rest. The night outside is colder than ever, but in this room, fear is colder still. Follow me up now, step by step on the old stone stairs that twist their way up the tower wall. Each step feels colder the higher you climb. Up here, the wind doesn't just whisper. It pushes hard, slips past fur collars, bites at skin that thought it was safe. At the top, the tower opens to a small stone platform, half sheltered by a sloped wooden roof that creaks when the wind pulls at its beams. A single torch burns near the doorway. Its flame dances wildly every time the wind squeezes through, leaning so far it threatens to die out completely. A lone guard stands near that flame. He squints into the darkness, one gloved hand gripping the torch pole to steady it. With the other, he pulls the fur tie tighter around his neck. He feels the wind crawl down his back like cold water and knows no cloak can truly block it. From here he can see the whole castle below a patchwork of black roofs and stone walls broken by a handful of dull red glows from courtyard fires left burning low. Once in a while, a shadow moves another guard patrolling the yard, the metal tip of his spear clicking against stone with each step. The sound floats up thin and lonely. The guard on the tower shifts his weight. His feet ache from standing still too long, but moving brings fresh wind under his coat, stealing warmth he barely has. He rubs a gloved hand over his face, blinks hard, tries to chase the sleep pressing at the edges of his mind. He mutters to himself the words lost in the wind. Stay awake. Just stay awake a bit longer. No matter how tough a man is, the tower tests him. Some say even the strongest knights, when forced to watch up here, have nodded off and paid dearly. Sleep is a bigger thief than any man hiding in the dark. A soft sound breaks his thought. Somewhere below on the steps he just climbed, something scratches against the old stones. He stops breathing for a moment, listening. There it is again. Scratch, scratch, then silence. Small claws, or softer than claws. Maybe leather boots moving slow where they shouldn't be. He wants to believe it's just a rat. Towers this old always have them. They slip through cracks, hide in corners, find warmth where they can. But tonight, with the wind tearing at him, and his eyes begging to close, even a rat sounds like danger. He digs into the small pockets stitched inside his fur coat. His fingers touch a hard lump of salt, a gift from his mother, before he left the village. She said salt keeps the belly warm and the mind awake. He presses it to his tongue, feels the rough edges scrape his teeth. The brine spreads sharp and bitter enough to drag him back from the edge of sleep for now. Please, let sleep stay away tonight, he whispers again. A quiet prayer spoken by every guard who ever fought his eyelids on a winter watch. Falling asleep here means risking everything. One slip and someone could climb these walls, slide a knife under a door, open a gate, no one is watching. The thought makes him squeeze the salt harder against his tongue. Below his boots the scratching comes again. He leans forward, eyes searching the stairway entrance. A tiny shadow darts out, tail whipping once, before it vanishes behind a broken stone. A rat after all. He breathes out, long and shaky, wipes the sweat from his eyebrow with the back of his glove. He checks the ties of his coat again, leans closer to the torch. His eyes sweep along the edge where the wall meets the dark sky. That edge hides secrets a clever thief might wait there, counting the seconds a guard looks away or drops his head in sleep. But tonight, he sees only the wind tugging at the torch flame and the faint drip of melted frost falling somewhere deep inside the stone. Far below, heavy boots thump against the steps, steady patient getting closer. Another guard is climbing up to take his place. The sound is a quiet relief, a promise of warmth and a stolen moment of sleep beside the courtyard fire below. A ghost of a smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. Just one more night survived. One more shift done, one more chance to rest his feet and close his eyes without guilt. He knows well enough inside these thick walls not everyone sleeps safely. Nobles toss and turn with blades hidden under pillows. Servants lean close to locked doors to hear whispers meant to stay hidden. Fear lives inside this fortress, same as the wind outside it, always waiting for someone to forget it's there. He pats the hilt of his sword hanging at his side. It's cold but steady. He mouths the old words every guard learns early and never forgets. Let the night stay quiet. Let no clever hand slip past. Let my eyes stay open just a little longer. Up here, high above the sleeping courtyards and secret fears, he repeats that promise to himself. As long as a man stays awake on this tower, the stones stand strong and the gates stay locked. And somewhere below, fires flicker in the wind, just bright enough to remind him dawn will come, if only he can keep his eyes open until it does. Step down with me now, back from the cold wind on the watchtower. We move along a narrow hallway, deep inside these walls. The stone here feels older, the air heavier, as if it has been holding its breath for 100 winters. These halls are meant to be empty at this hour. A guard may pass through once in a while, his torch spilling light along rough walls. But not now. Now the hallway is quiet, except for the careful steps of one man who has no business here so late. He moves close to the wall shadow pressed tight against old mortar. His clothes are plain, the soft grey tunic and dark sleeves that mark him as one of the lower servants someone meant to carry buckets sweep ash, keep his head down when nobles pass. But tonight, he carries something more than a broom or a pail of water. At the end of the hallway, where the stones bend around a corner and meet a forgotten shelf packed with old ledgers and a few dusty jars of dried herbs, he stops. He listens. His own breath sounds loud in his ears, so he forces himself to breathe through his nose slow and steady. No footsteps behind him, no door creaking open, no voice demanding to know what he's doing here alone. Good. He presses his fingers along the shelf. The books are fake at the edge, hollow paper glued thick to look like bindings. He finds the loose one quickly. He has done this before. A gentle tug, a tiny groan of wood, and a narrow slit appears behind the shelf, barely wide enough for a slim man to slip through. Inside, behind this secret door, is a space older than any living memory. It was built for lords who feared assassination. Now, it serves other fears. He pulls the shelf just wide enough, slides his thin body sideways through the gap, and lets the hidden door sigh shut behind him. He does not light a candle, he knows this tunnel by heart. In the dark, his hand drifts down his sleeve. His fingers brush against rough cloth. Wrapped tight inside it is an old knife. The blade short, the handle worn, smooth the edge, still sharp enough to do what must be done if promises are broken tonight. He shifts the blade higher inside his sleeve until the weight sits snug against his wrist bone, hidden but ready. He remembers the words spoken earlier in a corner of the cellar where wine casks leak and no torch dares burn too long. Gold enough to buy your mother a warm house. Gold enough to lift you from this dirt. All you must do is leave the latch open. One latch, one life. One life traded for coin. One king's sleep traded for a servant's freedom. Or so the whisper promised him. He tries not to think about what happens if the promise fails. If the other man, the one with the softer voice and finer cloak, decides a servant knows too much after tonight. His feet move slow along the tunnel floor. He counts the stones with each step, even in the pitch black. 12 stones to the first turn. 5 more to the stairwell door. He feels the door with his fingertips before he sees it old iron hinges cold as regret. Behind this door, a winding stair curves up to another hallway, closer to where the king sleeps under too many blankets, one hand always on his hidden blade. The servant will not go that far himself. He does not have the stomach to see royal blood in the moonlight. His work stops here with the latch he will leave loose, so another hand can slip in when the guards change shifts. He pauses. One last time he slides his sleeve back to check the knife. Still there, snug and silent. Not for killing the king. Only for his own throat if this plan goes bad, and he must choose between torture and silence. He swallows hard. He tells himself the gold will come. The whisper promised. When the deed is done, the gold will be waiting in a small cloth bag tucked in the straw behind the old stable wall. Enough to run far from these stones, far from this hallway that smells of mold and betrayal. A drip of water falls somewhere behind him, echoing like a footstep that doesn't exist. He breathes in, breathes out. His hand trembles, but only once. He reaches for the latch and lifts it, feeling the old iron catch and then slip free. Now the door can open with a push. No creaking, no squeal. Just one push when the moment is right. He steps back into the tunnel, the hidden blade pressing a cold kiss against his skin through the cloth. Behind him, the latch stays undone, and the hallway holds its breath for what comes next. Above this secret path, the castle sleeps uneasy stone walls, trusting guards who trust each other, while a servant who carries betrayal in his sleeve walks soft through the dark. Listen close now. This is how kingdoms fall, not with a roar, but with the hush of footsteps behind an old bookshelf, and a promise of gold heavy enough to buy a new life if death comes quietly tonight. Stay close now. We drift down again, leaving the hidden hallway behind us, back toward the open yard, where the walls breathe in the night air, and every shadow seems to whisper someone's name. Near the base of the tower, tucked under a narrow overhang of old wood and stone, a small knot of guards huddle together, their breaths rising in thin clouds that disappear into the rafters above. It is colder here than near the main fire, but safer too, hidden from the wind that claws at the open yard. In the center of this quiet corner, an old clay jug rests on a flat stone. Its sides are slick with sweat from cheap wine left too long in a cold cellar. One guard lifts the jug, carefully drinks deep, then wipes his mouth on the back of his glove. His breath smells sharp now, less of stale bread and more of sour grapes. He grins and passes the jug to the next man, whose fingers fumble at first, before tightening around the warm neck of the bottle. Not too much. Someone murmurs voice low, so it doesn't carry. But the warning is half-hearted, buried under the tired laugh that comes next. Another guard lifts a shoulder, in lazy defiance, takes his swallow and lets the wine slip down his throat, like a promise that the rest of this night will feel shorter, if only he forgets the cold long enough. A small joke drifts through their circle, not funny enough to be told twice, but enough to earn a few chuckles. One man's laughter cracks like dry wood, sudden and too loud, but then it softens quickly as the wine pulls at his eyelids. One by one, shoulders slump back against the wall. A spear clinks as its iron tip slides against a loose stone. Under the eaves, warmth is just enough to lull a man. The wind can't reach their feet here. The shadows hide them from the watch captain's eyes. So they do what tired men do. When they think no one watches, they lean closer, let their heads tilt forward, and promise themselves just a moment, just to rest my eyes. Outside their small shelter, the yard lies quiet. A torch sputters somewhere near the gate, a flame fighting the breeze and losing more each second. The guard's laughter has gone, now replaced by the rough rhythm of heavy breathing. One man's head rests against another's shoulder. Another man's chin drops to his chest, wine still sweet on his tongue. Beyond their circle, a door in the outer wall stands half closed. It is not the great iron gate they barred so carefully at dusk, just a small wooden door used by kitchen boys fetching water, or a stable hand running quick errands before dawn. It should have been shut tight after sunset, the bolt drawn across to keep stray dogs or wandering drunks from slipping in. But tonight, no one remembers. Or perhaps someone remembers, but does not care enough. The latch hangs loose, the wind pushing gently at the crack between old planks. With each breath of night air, the door shivers open just a little more, then pauses, then opens again, a shy mouth testing whether to whisper a secret. Near that door, no one stands watch. The guards who should guard it now doze beneath their wooden roof, lost in warm wine and half-finished dreams. A rat scuttles across the stone yard, nose twitching at the scent of spilled broth that never got scrubbed away after supper. It pauses by the open door, squeaks once, then vanishes into the dark gap without a sound. Above them, far higher on the wall, a lone sentry glances down and frowns when he sees the flicker of movement at the door. He thinks to shout, but then he remembers how cold his fingers are wrapped around the hilt of his sword. He thinks maybe the wind is to blame, maybe it is nothing at all. He tells himself the men below surely have it in hand, they always do. So he looks away again, scanning the tree line instead, letting the small slip pass him by, like a leaf blown across the path. Inside the guard shelter, someone snorts awake for half a heartbeat, blinking at the cold breath on his cheek. He sees the jug leaning on its side, a dark patch of wine dripping slowly between the flagstones. He thinks about picking it up, but the warmth behind his eyes pulls harder than the sense of duty that buzzes faint at the back of his mind. He lets the sleep come instead, the wine heavy in his veins. One more moment, he tells himself. He will stand in a moment. He will check the door. He will be alert again soon, but not yet. Not while the warmth feels this soft. The wooden door quivers once more in the restless night air. It does not swing wide, not yet, but sometimes it is enough. A door left careless, a guard who drifts a heartbeat too long. Castles do not fall all at once. They crack first at small places, where the wind creeps through and finds no man awake to push it back out. Step softly now. We leave behind the half-open door and the sleeping guards, who should have seen more than they did. We climb back through the stone heart of the castle, where the cold settles deepest and secrets wait in heavy curtains and slow breathing. Past narrow halls and a hidden stair, there is a passage so quiet tonight that the dust lies untouched on its old flagstones. Down this passage walks a shape that could be mistaken for shadow if you looked too quickly, but it is no ghost. It is flesh and breath and purpose wrapped in darkness. In the small pocket behind his belt, a hand trembles. Cold sweat has gathered on his palm, soaking the rough cloth that hides the hilt of a simple wooden-handled knife. He has carried many buckets, scrubbed many floors, bent his back so low that nobles never once saw the hunger in his eyes. But tonight, his back is straight, and every step sounds too loud in his own ears. He stops before a heavy wooden door. On the other side is a room thick with warmth and fur, where a king who fears sleep lies half dreaming of tomorrow's sunrise. The servant breathes in through his nose. His lungs ache from holding every breath too long. His fingers squeeze the knife hilt harder, knuckles white in the dark. He does not knock. He does not speak. He lifts the latch with a touch so careful it makes no click. The door shifts a hush of wood against stone, just wide enough for a man to pass through sideways breath held tight in his chest. Inside, the heat smothers him at once. Heavy curtains drop from the bed canopy velvet, older than his father's bones, stitched with gold thread that shines in the faint flicker of one lonely candle. He sees a shape under the blankets, a crownless man lost in restless sleep, one hand buried beneath the pillow, where another blade lies hidden but useless now. The servant's heart drums against his ribs like fists on a locked door. He steps closer. The curtains move just slightly, a sigh of fabric brushing his sleeve. He can smell the king now, wine and sweat and old fur. No one stirs. Not the guards outside who believe the king is safe behind thick walls, not the other servants tucked away in their tiny cots. He raises the knife. His arm trembles so much he fears he might drop it. He clenches his teeth so hard his jaw pops. The blade feels too light for what must be done. A wooden handle, a short edge good for cutting bread, gutting fish not made for kings. But tonight it will serve. He pushes through the curtains. The warmth hits him full, a stale breath from blankets that have hidden 1,000 private fears. He leans close. The king shifts, breathes out in a half-snore lips, parting to mumble a word that makes no sense to anyone but ghosts. A second of mercy flickers across the servant's mind. Maybe the gold is not worth it. Maybe his life would be longer spent carrying buckets than cutting throats. But mercy is quick to die when hunger has lived longer. The knife lowers. His free hand plants against the mattress to steady himself. He can see the king's throat now pale and soft in the candlelight, a pulse tapping beneath thin skin. He hesitates one heartbeat too. Then his hand squeezes the knife so hard the wooden handle creaks. He pulls the blade across flesh. It is not a clean cut. A wet sound breaks the quiet. The king's eyes fly open, a gasp tangled halfway between dream and terror. His lips shape a word, maybe a curse, maybe a plea. But the servant's hand clamps down over his mouth before any sound can crawl out. He pushes the blade again, deeper this time, and feels the life fighting under his palm. Velvet curtains shudder on their cords. A candle flame jumps when a foot kicks the mattress. Then the fight is gone as sudden as it began. The breath rattles out, trapped by fingers that do not dare let go, until the chest beneath them stops rising. Blood soaks the fur, warm and thick between the servant's knuckles. He does not wipe it yet. He listens first. The hall remains silent, the door still cracked just enough for escape. No guard rushes in. No shout tears through the stone calm. He pulls his hand away from the dead man's mouth. He stares at the face that once shouted orders at men like him. It looks smaller now, ordinary. He does not feel victory. He feels sick. He wipes the blade on the edge of the fur blanket. He slips it back into the cloth in his pocket. He takes one step back, then another, careful not to drag a bloodied boot across the polished floor. Behind him, the king lies quiet at last, surrounded by warmth that cannot save him now. The servant slips back through the cracked door, closing it with the same soft hush of wood on stone. He disappears down the dark passage, heart still pounding, hands still trembling but alive and free in ways he never dared whisper before tonight. Follow me down now, away from the dark chamber, where silence lies heavy over royal blood. Deeper into the stone belly of this castle, where no velvet hangs and no gold shines. Here, behind a door too narrow to bother locking, live the ones who sweep the floors, wash the linen, and pretend not to hear secrets that could cost them their tongues. In a cramped corner under a low, soot-stained beam, two servants crouch beside an old brazier. Its shallow bowl is packed with last night's ashes, and a few leftover embers clinging to life like stubborn moths. One boy pokes gently with an iron rod, hoping to wake a little more glow from the heart of the grey dust. When that fails, he reaches behind him and drags over a small bundle of dry twigs, wrapped in a scrap of cloth. He snaps each twig into smaller pieces, feeds them in slow, careful handfuls to the sleepy coals. A faint crackle answers him, not enough to warm his hands yet, but enough to give him hope that the heat might last a little longer. Beside him, another boy hugs his knees to his chest, chin tucked down into the collar of a patched wool shirt, too thin for this stone cold. Neither says much at first. Words waste breath, and breath carries warmth better spent inside the lungs. So they huddle closer, shoulders brushing. Now and then, eyes locked on the small flicker that dares stand up to the winter's bite. A gust of wind hums through a crack in the wall behind them, the same wall that holds back the bitter night outside. The flame shivers, bows low, then fights to rise again. The boy with the twigs curses under his breath, picks up another branch, and snaps it in two with numb fingers. "You're wasting it too fast," the other whispers, voice hoarse from the cold, dry air. "It's either burn it now, or freeze." The first boy snaps back not with anger, but with a kind of tired edge that comes when sleep and hunger and bone-deep chill braid themselves into the same knot. The second boy doesn't argue. He shifts closer, so close that his knee presses into the ash ring around the brazier's base. The warmth sneaks through cloth into his shin, barely enough to soothe the ache that runs up and down his legs. Minutes pass like this. Twigs feed, flame fights. The cold breath fogs, then fades. Somewhere above them, heavy boots thud along a hallway floor. They don't look up. The footsteps belong to men too busy to care about boys in the dark. Finally, when the bundle of twigs grows light in his lap, the first boy leans back against the stone wall, shoulders sagging. He blows gently at the red center of the coals. Sparks jump, but only a little. His breath fogs and drifts away a ghost he can't hold. He mutters, maybe to himself, maybe for both of them to hear, this night's too long. Too long by half. The other boy snorts a soft laugh, almost a cough. Longer than the last, he asks, voice muffled by the sleeve he's pulled up to cover his mouth. Feels like it. And tomorrow feels longer still. The first boy rubs his palms together, but the rough skin only scrapes and stings without gaining warmth. A drip of water falls from a crack in the beam overhead, lands on the back of the first boy's neck. He flinches, curses again, then pulls the collar tighter. The brazier flickers weakly in front of him, its glow a poor shield against the damp creeping into his bones. They talk little after that. Sometimes one shifts knees cracking, or lets out a sigh so soft it gets eaten by the pop of a new twig catching flame. At times, one boy's eyelids flutter down, snapping open, when the cold bites too sharp through his half-sleep. They do not dare sleep for long. Fire needs watching, and no master forgives servants who let embers die before dawn. In the corner sits a small clay jug, empty now, but still smelling faintly of the thin stew they were given before the night watch changed. The smell makes their bellies ache, but they say nothing. Hunger is an old friend. Cold is a crueler one. Above them, far up in rooms, gilded and guarded, others lie in beds piled thick with fur and soft linen. Here, two boys wrap their hopes around a stubborn coal and a handful of dry sticks. Here, warmth is a prayer they whisper through chattering teeth. This night's too long. One breathes again, softer now, as if the walls themselves might agree. The flame wavers, but does not die. Neither do they not yet. The castle shifts and groans in its sleep. Outside these stones the wind howls for blood. Inside, these two boys cling to a brazier, and each other waiting for morning to remember them kindly. Not far from the warmth the servants fight to keep alive, the simple people of these walls lie scattered in corners the lords will never visit. There is no velvet here, no polished stone floor swept each dawn. Only rough planks, old straw, and the smell of too many tired bodies crowded too close to the cold. A man rolls over on a thin bedding of straw laid straight on a warped wooden floor. Each shift of his weight sends a squeal through the planks, an old groan that seems to echo every bone in his back. The straw beneath him is patchy, spread thin where it should be thick. It was stuffed fresh once, but nights like this turn it flat and sour too quickly. The scratchy stalks poke through the torn cloth of his blanket. He pulls his knees up tight, tucking cold feet under warmer thighs, but the straw shifts with him, and a sharp bit scrapes his shoulder blade. He huffs into the dark breath, misting, and gone before it can warm his nose. Beneath the straw, tiny shapes crawl. One finds the soft skin behind his ear. He flinches when the bite comes a quick sting that blooms into an itch that will linger long after the sun comes up. He scratches it with blunt fingernails, then lifts a handful of straw and shakes it. A handful of bugs skitter deeper, hiding where the warmth of his body has coaxed them awake. A cough rattles his ribs. It starts low, a dry tickle, then hacks out sharp enough to rattle the thin walls around him. The cough dies, but its echo does not. It drifts across the dark room, waking a child who whimpers once before burying a face in a mother's sleeve. Beyond the wooden boards, the night wind finds its way through every crack it can. It sighs through the gaps where the wall doesn't meet the roof quite right, whistling just loud enough to make sleep uneasy. It presses at the thin door, rustles the dry grass stuffed between the planks to keep the worst of the cold out. Someone shifts on another bed of straw a few steps away. Another back turned to the wind. Another pair of feet curling in a desperate search for warmth that isn't there. The floor beneath them creaks at every breath and cough, reminding them that no matter how still they lie, the old boards remember every restless dream. A mother hushes the child she cradles against her chest. She strokes tangled hair with cracked fingers, whispering a half prayer to keep the fever from coming back tonight. Beside her, a man coughs again, softer now, so he does not wake the whole corner. He has learned that coughing too loud will scare the little ones more than the wind ever could. The straw shifts under his shoulder. Another bite. He grits his teeth and ignores it. He has no oil left to sprinkle along the seams, no clean blanket to shake free of nests. Tomorrow he will shake out the bedding again in the pale dawn light, flick the bugs into the ash pit, and pray they do not crawl back faster than he can swat them away. For now there is only straw and stale air, and the creak of damp wood that holds them off the dirt floor below. There is only the wind pressing against the thin wall, hissing secrets that no one wants to hear. He listens to the wind anyway. It reminds him that he is not alone. It slips through the gaps by the roof beam, curls down his neck, and steals whatever heat the straw pretends to offer. He tucks his chin deeper under the ragged edge of his blanket, breathes slow, lets the cold settle where it will. In a far corner, someone mutters in sleep a wordless plea to no one. A baby whimpers, a woman hushes, a cough answers, the wind breathes through it all. In this room, warmth is not a hearth or a brazier. It is shared breath skin, pressed to skin. Hope that the roof will not give way when the wind grows angry. It is the promise that the dawn, when it comes, might bring sun enough to chase the chill from the planks, at least until the next night drags it back again. A rafter groans overhead. The straw rustles. The bugs settle back into their nests, hidden under dry stalks, waiting for the next warm body to feed them. The man scratches at a fresh bite behind his knee, then sighs into the darkness. Somewhere outside, the wind gathers itself and rattles the wall hard enough to wake the mother again. She squeezes the child closer, hums an old song too faint for anyone but the wind to remember. The floor creaks. The straw whispers. The cough comes back. The wind answers. And still they lie in this patchwork warmth, peasants' bugs, wind, and all waiting for a dawn they trust more than the walls around them. A small body curls tighter under a blanket, patched too many times to stay whole. Tiny feet press into the bend of a mother's knee, hunting warmth in the folds of her old dress. A damp nose nudges under rough cloth, seeking comfort where cold can't reach. The mother strokes fine hair, with a hand cracked from scrubbing wooden floors and hauling buckets. She hums a note that barely counts as a lullaby, more a breath meant to steady her child's heartbeat than a song to chase dreams closer. Beside them, an older boy leans in, voice low but sharp enough to slip through the gaps in the blanket. He knows he shouldn't whisper at this hour. He knows the dark has ears. But the words slip from him like water through straw, and once they start, they can't be pulled back. They say there's a ghost by the old. Well, he begins mouth too close to the small ear that twitches against mother's chest. It walks at night when the wind rattles the gates. It's looking for children who don't sleep when they're told. The little head buries deeper into the mother's side nose, cold against her ribs. She hushes the boy with a look, but he only grins through crooked teeth, his eyes wide with the thrill of fear he's safe enough to feel. He leans closer, whispering where only his brother can hear. If it finds you awake, it drags you to the deep water, and you never come back up. A soft whimper muffles into the cloth at the mother's waist. She clucks her tongue, pulls the blanket tighter around the small shoulders, tugs the boy's ear until he winces. He laughs under his breath, more to himself than at her scolding. Outside their circle, the room holds its hush, broken only by the wind's distant sigh against the planks. The cough of a man too old for this cold, the creak of the roof beam shifting as if it too is trying to listen. Near the room's far end, a single coal brazier fights to keep its weak flame alive. Dry branches catch and hiss, feeding a small hungry fire that dances more in shadow than in warmth. The flicker crawls up the wall behind the family, casting long shapes that bend and twist each time the flame gasps for air. To the child's wide eyes, these shapes bloom into monsters. A horned beast one moment, a crooked giant the next. Shadows slip across old wood, gnaw at the ceiling, then crawl back down to crouch behind the boy's thin back. He squeezes his eyes shut, but sleep does not come. The mother feels him stiffen against her belly. She knows that stiffness, it means a night of jerking awake sweaty cries for her in the dark, and tomorrow, a day as restless as the night before. She hushes him again, voice low, almost lost under the pop of the burning twigs. No ghosts here, little crow, only wind and stories. Stories can't bite, but stories can burn. The older boy smirks into his sleeve mouth close to the flame, as if daring it to flicker higher just to prove him right. He whispers once more. Then why does it knock on windows when no one's awake? A tiny gasp breaks against the mother's cloth. She shushes him sharper this time, a slap of her palm against his shoulder. The boy yelps more from surprise than pain. He sulks into the shadows near the wall, arms, crossed eyes still glinting with the thrill of mischief. Only children carry so easily through the longest nights. The little one lies rigid now. His eyes shine too bright in the dim light round as coins, staring past his mother's shoulder, where the flickering shapes still twist into toothy creatures that vanish if he blinks too long. He tries not to blink. The wind rattles a loose shutter just once enough to yank a startled squeak from his throat. He burrows deeper into warmth that barely holds. His mother rocks him side to side, her breath brushing his forehead, her hum returning even softer than before. By the fire, the shadow beasts dance a new shape. A crooked man with claws for fingers, a tall demon with a broken back. Each shape slides down the rough planks, settling at the child's feet, before melting back into ordinary darkness when he dares to look straight on. He swallows around the lump in his throat. He tells himself not to cry. Big boys don't cry. Big boys sleep. But sleep does not want him yet. Sleep avoids him like a scared dog waiting for the monsters to stop snarling in the firelight. His mother leans her head against the wall behind her. Her eyelids drift low, her fingers still tangled in his hair, moving now and then to prove she is awake for him, for both of them. Her hum drifts off. Her breath slows. The boy listens to it. He listens to the older brother's shallow snore, to the fire's tiny sighs, to the wind pushing its secrets through cracks. He listens hardest to the shapes behind his eyes, praying they do not speak his name tonight. Just beyond the thick curtains that concealed the king's last breath, the darkness in the city began to stir. A group of guards changing their shifts late held torches and walked silently through the narrow corridor that was usually quiet until dawn. The yellow flame swept across the damp wall and fell to the cold stone floor. A strange red streak flashed in the flickering light, a small one, like someone spilling a bowl of stale soup. But with a low bend, the guard's nose wrinkled. Blood. The stench was fresh, warm and thick, clinging to his gloves when he touched it. At his feet, the skinny old dog that followed him every night shivered. Its nose was pressed close to the floor, its fur bristling along its back. A low growl passed, and then it suddenly barked loudly, echoing through the narrow corridor like a muffled trumpet. The guard was startled and swept the torch farther away. The trail of blood spread from the fur, stretching like a broken thread. A skid marker hand clawing at the wall to continue crawling. Blood traced a weak but clear path. A pungent smell hovered around the tip of his nose, making him swallow a chill creeping through his thick collar. "Come here, you!" The soldier growled, his other hand pulling his sword from its sheath. The sound of steel scraping against iron sounded like it was cutting into the cold air. The dog did not wait for a second command. It rushed after the blood trail, its claws scratching loudly on the stone. A bark rang out, tearing apart the corner of the wall that was in a semi-sleep. A black figure staggered across the torchlight at the end of the corridor. The guard's eyes blinked once, then he shouted at the top of his lungs. "There is a traitor, reinforcements quickly." The sound of other footsteps gathered. A comrade appeared, his face still covered in sleep, his hand still pulling his helmet loosely. "What?" "Blood, stranger." The dog saw him. The first soldier shouted, gripping the hilt of his sword so tightly that the white veins stood out on his gloves. A dog was barking somewhere near the side door leading to the inner courtyard. That wooden door, it should have been locked since the sun had set. But the night wind had managed to sneak through the gap, pushing the creaking door open a little further. A black shadow rushed across the gap, leaving a trail of blood on the doorknob. The dog jumped up and barked loudly, the smell of blood carrying it away with its last instincts of hunting. The guard bit his lips, brandished his torch, and ran close behind, shouting orders that echoed back. "Lock the gate to the upper court, block the south wall, capture alive." The distorted brass trumpet blew a whistle, then another, longer and higher, jolting the soldiers out of their beds like a swarm of bees whose nest had been disturbed. The wooden doors slammed against the wall, the sound of iron bars being hastily removed, the sound of shoes with hooves pounding loudly in the narrow corridor. A new soldier caught up, brandishing his sword with a trembling hand. What happened? Who's injured? Who ran? Blood is flowing from the king's chamber. If that person escapes through the wall, it's as if our necks will be lost. First, the old soldier hissed through his teeth, his hand never leaving the hilt of his sword. Outside the yard, the night wind whipped strongly, carrying the breath of the dying person on the grass path. The dog changed direction, rushing into the small corner of the kitchen's vegetable garden. The dewy leaves rustled with the footsteps of the person desperately scratching for a way out. A branch broke with a crack. The sound of heavy breathing escaped, drowned out by the dog's voice. Torch after torch, the fire pierced the darkness into patched pieces. The sound of metal being pulled out of its sheath, the sharp command echoed on the old stone roof. A young soldier shouldered through the bushes and caught a glimpse of a grey figure crawling close to the wall, blood dripping on the grass. "I saw it over here." "Close the circle, out the fire, close the circle." The old soldier shouted, his throat dry from the night wind. His hand gently rubbed the back of his bare sword, as if comforting himself before the steel actually touched his flesh. A torch fell onto the grass, the fire catching the straw and stubble, casting a distorted silhouette of a person running away on the blood-stained lime wall. The dogs howled the breaths, whistling through the teeth of the sword-wielding men who were gradually closing the circle. In the night, the sound of horses' hooves suddenly knocked from the main gate. Another night watchman had heard the trumpets and was galloping back. A growl, the sound of steel clashing, seemed to signal the end that awaited in the corner of the yard, where the blood had not yet dried. The castle yard, once half asleep under a pale moon, now crackles alive with the voice of hounds and the hiss of torches scraping shadows off old stone walls. Somewhere near the broken garden fence, the old dog lifts its muzzle and howls. Not a bark this time, a deep, ragged cry that claws up its thin throat and drags every other chained dog in the yard into the chorus. Their calls leap the walls, echo off guard towers, and roll down corridors, where startled men fumble for blades in the dark. A line of torchlight grows behind the howling. Guards spread out boots, crunching over frosted herbs and broken branches. Each flame swings low over root stone tufts of grass, still wet with the drip of someone's cut vein. One man swings his torch so close to a bush that dry twigs crackle and spit embers at his sleeve. He curses, stamps the sparks flat, then drives the flame back toward the shadows, where he swears he heard a breath. More dogs howl nearer now, their chains rattling as they strain to be loosed into the hunt. One pulls so hard, the stake pinning its collar tears free of soft earth, sending the animal bounding past two startled guards, nose to the trail of cold scent and warm blood. Beyond the ring of torchlight, the wind snaps at faces slick with sweat. It creeps under helms, slides its cold fingers into necklines and sleeves, and makes eyes sting so bad, a man has to blink twice, just to be sure the dark didn't move while he squinted. A captain old enough to remember quieter nights lifts his torch high and bellows, "Search every root, every barrel. If he breathes, he bleeds, and the hounds will have him." His men answer with the scrape of drawn steel. A younger guard lips cracked from the wind ducts behind a stack of wood left for the kitchen hearth. he finds only old spiders and a single rat that squeals, darts away and vanishes under loose planks. The guard spits, wipes his nose on his sleeve and mutters a prayer, half to the saints, half to the ghosts. Let him not slip past me. Let me stand in the dawn, alive. Overhead, the castle walls loom cold teeth, biting at the night sky. From one watchtower to the next, the dog's chorus runs like a rope pulled tight through stone, and wind a warning that no crack stays safe for long. Near the stable door, 2 more guards swing their torches in angry sweeps, light bouncing off rain barrels and the cracked edges of a brick oven once used for bread. One squints, thinks he sees a shoe sole under the slanting roof. He lunges forward, but finds only a pile of rags stiff with old grease. His shout dies on his tongue. Behind him, the wind changes. It shoves at the flame in his hand, bends it sideways, so shadows jump behind a rotting fence. They're pressed flat against the cold plank, a breath shudders too soft to hear above the howling, but enough to fog the wood an inch from a nose too terrified to twitch. Inside that hiding chest, our heart trips and staggers faster than the dogs barking at the moon. 1 heartbeat, 2, 3, each one louder in the ribs than the hammer of boots trampling the yard just beyond the fence. A guard closer to the gate spits into the dirt knuckles white on his spear. This wind's got eyes tonight, he says to nobody. Eyes and claws. I swear I saw him slip this way. He shifts his grip, drives the spear's butt into the ground to calm his shaking hands. The captain shouts again, torch the hedges, smoke him if we must. He won't crawl out under our feet. A torch dips into the bramble's edge. Dry thorn snaps under orange tongues. Smoke rolls quick and mean, stinging eyes that already fight the wind's bite. A few men cough, curse, but none dare drop the line that pins the night into a shrinking cage. Somewhere under the fence, a whisper of movement, a scraped boot, sole a hiss of breath, bitten off before it can betray more. 1 hound catches. It stops howling and snarls deep in its chest. Its handler feels the leash pull tight and growls back. Go then. Go. The dog lunges, teeth-bared body low to the ground. Leaves scatter. The hidden shadow tenses, bare fingers claw dirt for a push that may buy seconds, maybe less. Above all this, the moon watches soft and full, spilling pale truth across old walls and trembling hands. The wind laughs through the courtyard, flicking torches, so flame dances over stone, and nowhere left promises safety now. 1 more howl splits the dark. Boots slam the earth, steel scrapes wood, and under the stink of sweat and fear and burned bramble, someone whispers inside his skull, "Don't breathe too loud, don't blink too slow, just 1 heartbeat more." A crack in the line of torches, a breath of wind stronger than the guard's shouts, and the wounded shadow finds it slips past a torchbearer, blinded by his own smoke dives, under the sleeve of a fence half fallen years ago. Inside the circle, a guard curses when the hound loses the scent. Boots scatter gravel, where no blood drips anymore. But under that fence, the shadow crawls, teeth clenched against a fresh tear in skin, where stone rips old wounds wider. Past the garden wall, the ground drops toward the old wine cellars, deep cold vaults built back when kings trusted stone more than men. A broken door hangs loose there, iron hinges eaten thin by damp nights and the crawl of moss. The shadow stumbles inside, breath hitching loud in the black mouth of the stairwell. Behind the barking flares again, another hound finds the trail, drags 2 men with it, both young enough to believe they'll be heroes by dawn. They crash through brambles, slap moss off stone, shove each other aside at the cellar door's lip. Inside, the air is colder than the yard wind ever dares. It tastes of wet stone old casks and the secret drip of rain that seeps through cracks year after year. The wounded man's foot scrapes the first step, almost trips him down the entire flight, but he catches himself on the slick wall, smears blood across moss that's known only spiders until tonight. Boots hit the stairs behind him, iron-shod heels, hammering like hammers, driving nails into a coffin lid. 1 guard spits into the dark calls down. Show yourself. You're a corpse. Anyway. His voice ricochets off barrels, stacked low, and arches so ancient they tremble back a whisper. Below the shadow crouches at the landing, tries to breathe quiet. A drop of blood taps the stone between his feet, red mixing with the grey slime pooled where rain lives in winter. He presses one hand tight to his ribs, feels the warm leak through his sleeve no matter how hard his fingers clench. 1 step. 2. The guards descend slow. Now blades drawn torches shoving shadows against the curved ceiling. The air is thick here enough that each exhale sounds like a threat. Near a row of casks, the shadow pushes himself forward, shoulder brushing a barrel so big a child could sleep inside it. Wood groans under his weight. The guard nearest catches the sound lunges, sword tips scraping metal hoops instead of flesh. Sparks spit out hiss against damp walls. The wounded man slips deeper feet, slapping puddles he can't see, each splash singing out exactly where his heart hammers. He ducks behind a rack of wine bottles, breath rattling through teeth clamped shut to stop a scream he doesn't have time to waste. A torch passes too close, heat flicks his hair but misses skin. The guard growls low, half to himself. Bleeds like a pig, runs like a rat. Up above, a third guard blocks the stair mouth. He can't see into the black throat of the cellar, but knows the shape they hunt hasn't left yet. His hands twitch on the spear point, aimed at the gap where footsteps must emerge if the trap below fails. Inside the vault, the wounded man's palm slips over another stone, leaving a red smear so bright it could guide a child in the dark. He feels it now pulse, slowing weakness dripping down his leg, as surely as the blood drips behind him. The wet smell curls up around stale wine spiderweb rot, and the memory of better feasts. A guard kicks a barrel aside. It rolls on its iron rings, thumps once, twice, and splits just enough to spill a trickle of sour wine onto the floor. It runs through the blood-thin red, threading into thicker red until the stone soaks it all up like a drunk who can't say no. A cough cracks the silence, too sharp, too human. A sword flashes through a row of hanging ropes. Nothing but a swirl of rats that squeal and vanish into a hole they know by heart. Below, the hunted man closes his eyes for one heartbeat. The cellar's cold, hugs him like a brother, now holds him still, when every thought screams, "Run, run, run." He pushes his palm tighter to the wound. The floor shivers under bootfalls, drawing near again. A shout bounces down. He's bleeding out, block the drain tunnel. He'll crawl it like a snake if you let him. Steel scrapes stone, a barrel tips. Wine breathes sour air across the stone. The hound at the stair barks once more, a final note in a song older than King's the Hunt, closing the blood trailing the stone, drinking every drop as witness. While dogs howl beyond stone walls and blades catch breath in a cold cellar in a far corner of this same fortress, 2 young servants sit hunched near what's left of the hearth fire. They do not know whose blood trails across the yard. They do not know the king lies quiet behind a door no one dares open yet. They know only that their bones ache, their toes feel numb, and the small circle of red coals before them is the only thing standing between them and the bitter teeth of this long night. One boy, shoulders too thin for the coat he wears, uses a bent iron poker to stir the heap. Ash lifts in a lazy swirl, bits of white drifting up, only to die against the black stones of the chimney throat. A faint crackle answers him, but no new flame. Just the soft hiss of old wood giving up its last warmth. Beside him, the other boy cups his palms together, holds them so close to the coals he can feel the skin on his knuckles tighten. He shifts closer. The hem of his rough tunic brushes soot. He doesn't care. Warmth is worth dirty sleeves tonight. On the floor between them sits a small clay cup, no bigger than an old man's fist. Inside sloshes the last of a jug someone left behind when the cook stumbled off to see what the barking meant. A thin finger of wine, sour, but still sharp enough to warm a belly for a heartbeat or two. They glance at each other, then back at the cup. No words pass between them. One picks it up, lets the rim kiss chapped lips. He tips it just enough for a mouthful swallows, and lets the warmth spread across his tongue down his throat into the hollow where hunger sleeps. He hands it back with a half-smile, teeth too big for his young face. The other boy nods. Thanks he does not say aloud. He takes a sip, closes his eyes. imagines the sour burn is good wine, that the coals before him are a roaring hearth, like the one they say crackles behind the king's great table, though neither has seen it, only heard older men swear it's real. One sip remains. He lifts the cup halfway to his mouth but stops, catches the other boy's eye, and sets it down between them again. A shared shrug means they understand tomorrow is long. Dawn is cruel. One last swallow might matter more then. Outside, the wind moans at the shutters. It rattles, a loose hinge pokes cold fingers through the crack, where the wall meets the crooked door frame. The smaller boy shivers, rubs his knuckles against each other, and leans so close his nose nearly touches the dull red of the topmost coal. "Do you think they'll bring more wood?" he whispers, breath misting pale over the ash. The other boy snorts soft so it won't wake the shadows. "Wood's for the big hearths, not for us." If it goes out, he shrugs again. His shoulders say what words can't. If it goes out, then we wait for morning teeth to chatter us awake. A gust presses hard against the door. It whistles through the crack, finds the weak flame clinging under the blackened log. The coal flickers, brightens once enough to paint their young faces in one last flush of warmth, then sighs out a faint wisp of smoke, curling into the chimney's hungry mouth. Both boys watch the dark fill the pit where red once glowed. Neither moves at first. The smaller one rubs his arms hard, pretending it helps. His fingers find the cup again. He lifts it, tilts it back, lets the last mouthful roll over his tongue before passing it back for the final drop. They share the ghost of a laugh. Quiet, cracked by cold lips, but honest. In the yard far behind them, men shout steel sings, dogs bark until their throats crack. None of it reaches here. Here there is only the smell of spent wood, the tang of cheap wine, and the soft sound of two boys breathing slow in the dark. One shifts closer, pulls the other's arm tight across his chest. He feels the small bones under a thin sleeve, counts each breath like counting embers, fragile, easy to lose. His own eyelids fight to close, but crack open each time the wind groans under the door. "Will it snow?" the smaller boy asks into the older one's collar. "Not tonight." He doesn't really know. He says it because tonight is already heavy enough without more white to bury it. They sit this way a long time. Even after the last coal goes black, even after the cup lies dry between them, they pretend the warmth clings a little longer. Two shapes pressed together on cold stone, sharing the lie that dawn will come kindly if they do not close their eyes first. Beyond the door, the wind tests the walls again. A flake of ash stirs at the hearth's lip, then settles back into the quiet unlit, unclaimed and colder, with every heartbeat that follows. Somewhere up the inner wall, well above the last sputter of dying coals, and the distant barks of dogs chasing shadows, 3 guards huddle beneath a lean-to of old planks nailed crooked against the wind. Their eyes burn with sleepless grit, lids dipping low despite the fear that shivers through every courtyard stone tonight. One guard, older than the others, tries to keep himself awake, the only way he knows, by dragging out an old tale that tastes of grave dirt and whispered dread. His voice stumbles, roughened by wine and the salt of too many cold nights on high stone. They say when the black frost comes and the wind blows from the north gate, there's a lady who knocks on the rampart door. His eyelids flutter shut, snap open again, when the youngest flicks a finger against his helmet rim. Not that one again. The young one huffs, but leans closer anyway. Even the worst ghost stories burn off a corner of the night's bite. The old guard clears his throat. Either same. She was a kitchen maid, or maybe a stable girl, or the captain's daughter if you believe drunk sergeants. Doesn't matter. One winter, a groom cornered her behind the hay bales. He breaks off blinking hard, as if the memory's candle guttered too soon. The second guard barks out a laugh, dry sharp meant to scatter the chill creeping up his spine. And so she comes back every frost to drag fools like you off the wall, eh? He flicks his gaze at the third man, who only shrugs eyes, half-closed, breath rising in thin puffs that vanish as quick as they leave his cracked lips. Outside the lean-to, wind rattles the loose planks. Somewhere far below, a shout snaps the dark, then dies under the hush of stone and sleeping roofs. The oldest tries again, voice slurring into a half mumble. She wears no shoes, blood on her shift. If she knocks once you get a year's luck, twice. Twice means your wife births twins, but 3 times. He snorts a breathless laugh, a sound like dry branches rubbing. 3 times means she wants your name for her grave. He drifts, then chin nodding into the collar of his patched coat. The youngest flicks his glove against the man's knee, not to wake him fully, but to keep him just this side of sleep. A snore would carry too far tonight. They all know it. The second guard shifts his weight boots, grinding cinders into the flagstone under their feet. He glances at the old blade resting beside him, its hilt within reach if the wind brings more than ghost tonight. His fingers hover above it, once then drop back to his knee. Not yet. Not while the shadows breathe quietly at the edge of their circle. A cough breaks the hush. The youngest wipes his nose with the back of his wrist, mutters, "No footsteps tonight, old mother. Keep your knocking for another watch. No one laughs this time." Even the second guard's dry chuckle has died under the drag of cold that soaks bone deeper than any hearth can reach. Above them, the lean-to squeaks. A loose plank shifts, lets a slice of wind spill down the back of the youngest man's neck. He jerks his shoulders up, pulling his collar high, then shuffles closer to the hilt resting near his boot. Another gust rattles the rotting frame. A hinge somewhere behind the wall bangs twice, once soft, once hard. The old guard's eyes crack open, bleary lips moving around the same old prayer he forgets before the last word leaves his tongue. No one mentions the noise. No one stands to check it. They have learned this better, to hold the line here half asleep, but armed, than to go chasing noises that vanish into frost and fog. The youngest dozes first chin, buried in his scarf mouth open just wide enough to show the chip in his front tooth. Beside him, the second guard sits, stiff eyes darting from the blade at his side to the pale strip of sky pushing dawn closer breath by reluctant breath. The old man slumps deeper back, pressed to rough wood mouth forming ghost names, even as sleep drags him down. One gloved hand rests loose against his knee. The other curls toward the hilt of his sword fingertips, brushing worn leather as if to remind bone and blood alike that even in sleep a blade should never be more than a whisper away. Outside the wind sighs once more, then quiets. Somewhere beyond the wall, the story he mumbled hangs unfinished in the air. A ghost promise drifting over a fortress that tonight and every night fears what the dark might knock loose when men close their eyes too deep for dreams. A splash of footsteps in the dark. A growl too close to dodge. A fist buried in wet cloth, dragging flesh and blood out from behind a barrel slick with old wine and fresher stains. The hound's teeth snap at air as hands wrestle the traitor to the ground. Boots crash over spilled casks. A guard's knee pins a shoulder down, grinding old bruises deeper into bone. The hunted man gasps a wordless plea, but it cuts short when a gauntlet slaps hard across his mouth. Quiet rat. The voice is flat-winded, older than the boy, pressing a torch close enough to see torn flesh on ribs that still heave for breath. Outside the cellar dawn has not yet peeled frost from the roof slates. Inside the darkness holds tight, broken only by the glow of 2-3 torches, and the wet shine of a blood trail that ends where the traitor now squirms. A guard lifts the man half upright by his hair. His other hand pulls free a coil of leather, cracked and stiff, but honest enough for the work. The first lash lands across the traitor's back with a sound like tearing cloth. A grunt. Another lash. Then words, but so thin they almost fall apart before they reach the ceiling. "Speak up." The captain crouches eye-level, one hand on the man's chin, forcing him to face the truth in firelight. The traitor's lips twitch around names, half-truths, old fear chewed too long to taste clean anymore. Who opened the door? The question slides through clenched teeth. Another guard circles behind rolling shoulders, wrist flicking the whip, so it cracks the stone before it kisses flesh again. I was promised. The traitor coughs, spits blood or wine, or both on the stone. His breath rattles thin as parchment. Gold, he said he promised. The whip snaps. A bark of pain bursts from his throat, ragged short swallowed too quick by the damp cellar walls. He tries to curl forward, but rough hands wrench him straight again. He who the captain grinds out. His shadow stretches long against the cask's flickers when the torch shifts with every tremble of the prisoner's shoulders. No answer comes whole, only scraps cracked between sobs and the sting of the leather. Night, maybe. A voice behind a mask I never saw, only gold. I swear, the whip cracks again. Not for truth now, but for silence. A guard mutters low enough for now. He'll bleed out before he says more.